What I see in Blackwell is there's opportunities. My goal is to increase mileage and utilization of the equipment. We're out there to make money. If those wheels aren't rolling, we're not making any money.
Hello and welcome to CB Talk, the Combined Transport Blackwell monthly podcast. Today is September 27th, 2024, and I'm your host, Nick Card, Vice President of Operations. Today we have a great interview for you with Buddy Acup, the new Division Manager for Blackwell Consolidation. Buddy's got some interesting stories about his life, some of his ideas for Blackwell as we move forward, and some optimistic outlook as we move into the next year and get through election season. But first, the news. Our drivers and employee of the month this month, Richard Terry for Glass and Flatbed, Scott Lefevre for Blackwell, Jim Shelton for Heavy Haul, and John Criswell as our employee of the month. Congratulations and thank you all for the hard work you do. This last week was Driver Appreciation. On Saturday, we had a great barbecue, and we got to announce our Drivers of the Year. These drivers have gone above and beyond for the company, for their fellow drivers, for their coworkers here in the office, to ensure that Combined Transport and Blackwell are not only a great place to work, but are a great company to do business with. I want to thank Gary Bailey as Driver of the Year for Glass and Flatbed, Marvell Wright, Driver of the Year for Blackwell, Josh Ward, Driver of the Year for Heavy Haul, and we have a special owner-operator spotlight. Thanks to Terry and Kurt Pike, owner-operator brothers that have absolutely gone above and beyond in their role as owner-operators to help make Combined and Blackwell excellent in everything. Thank you all and congratulations. It's an honor to work with all of you. Also, it's nearly the end of the year, which means it's time for insurance enrollments. Keep an eye on your email. You'll be receiving emails from HR. If you have any changes for your insurance, anything that you'd like to do, that process starts soon. So keep an eye for those emails so you can make sure you get those in during the window. In the news today, more environmental regulations out of California. California is looking to adopt their Advanced Clean Fleets rule and begin enforcement starting January 1st. The American Trucking Association, the California Trucking Association, and other groups are opposed to this regulation and have continued to bring legal action to try to stop this regulation from happening. The goal of Advanced Clean Fleets is to make trucks cleaner and more environmentally friendly, but frankly, Advanced Clean Fleets sets incredibly unrealistic targets for clean trucks. These trucks are too expensive. These trucks can't do the job. They don't have the range. They're too heavy. They can't haul the weight, and it will turn trucking on its head. That means more expensive goods for consumers, more expensive food at the grocery store, more expensive packages from Amazon. This rule is bad for the industry, it's bad for America, and unfortunately, California is trying to lead the way in these policies. Hopefully, ATA and these other groups are able to stop this before it goes into effect in January 1. With that, here's our interview with Buddy Acup. Today in the studio, my guest is Buddy Acup. Buddy just took over on August 8th. He is now the new Division Manager for Blackwell Consolidation. Buddy is a third-generation trucker, and that's actual truck driver. Buddy enjoys fishing in his spare time, and I hear you've caught a 30-pound catfish in Texas, in Paris, Texas. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
That's a big
That's
catfish.
no fish story.
Yeah. Right? So, Buddy, for those, you're obviously brand new to the company, though you're not new to the industry. Can you share a little bit about your background as a trucker, what you've been doing, and what brings you to Blackwell?
Sure. So I am definitely a third generation, possibly fourth generation truck driver, except for, fourth generation, that would have been a horse and buggy wagon. But my grandfather started a trucking company out of Blythe, California, fuel company, and my father and his brothers went to work for him delivering fuel and picking up motor oil that they were changing from cars and so forth. But they started recycling motor oil and selling basically recycled motor oil. But then, of course, they started their own trucking companies, came up to Oregon because of the lumber industry, and there was plenty of jobs to be had for delivering lumber across the United States.
So then how'd you get into trucking? You following your father's footsteps there, working in the lumber side?
Well, as much as I tried not to, it just kind of happened naturally. They say that it runs in your blood. And the joke that my father always told me, my mother said that I was conceived in a sleeper of a truck, so I had no way to get away from it.
You're stuck from the moment of conception. There you go.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I'm third generation trucker as well. My grandfather started a business. I don't have a CDL like you do, but for me, trucking is absolutely in my blood, and I can't see myself doing anything else. So, yeah, join the club.
Yeah. It was great to hear the story of how Combine started, and I went to that during orientation. So I thought it was great, and it makes me feel great to work for a company that's founded in truck drivers.
So what brought you to Blackwell? I mean, what did you see in us that made you want to join our team?
Blackwell, I was referred to by a previous employee from previous trucking company that I worked for. When a position was coming open, he referred me to ownership, Mike and the team and management team, and they brought me in for an interview.
Yeah. Well, so now that you're here, what are your initial impressions of Blackwell, and what do you see for Blackwell as we look to the future?
So, my experience, I've done, flatbed, I've done dry van, and I've done refrigerated freight as a truck driver. And then I also was a broker for a while, and I did brokered loads for refrigerated and van freight, and very small, limited to flatbed or step deck. But I've just always been refrigerated and dry van. That's been my experience, and so Blackwell does fit within that queue. Mm-hmm. So what I see in Blackwell is there's opportunities for utilization of company equipment and to increase the mileage for the drivers. And just like at Mike's orientation greeting, the goal for the company is to make sure that the drivers make money. That's what we're here to do. We're here to make money for our families. So my goal is to increase and utilize the capacity that we have to increase mileage and utilization of the equipment.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I know that's been something that has been a challenge. The economy has had issues. Trucking as an industry has had issues. We have the uncertainty of the election coming up. How do you see kind of all of that economic malaise playing into the future? Do you see some positive trends? Are we on the cusp of a turnaround? What's sort of your sense of the market as we look ahead?
So, and I know most of the truck drivers out there, they listen to either Fox News or some type of news as they're driving down the road. So and there are some drivers that would probably prefer not to listen to it, but it does have a lot to do, in fact, with the miles that we're generating right now as a company. We're, just as industry, we're in a freight recession and have been for almost 2 years. So I'm hoping, given the administration, and of course this is an election year, they're going to try and reduce fuel costs, reduce costs, and get a hold on inflation. So it definitely surely has an impact on us in the industry, as far as freight is just not paying as well as it has in the past, and there's just not as many loads. And this in the first time in history where you have more trucks and drivers available than there are loads. It's the first time in history.
Not a good place to be in, obviously. Now, recently we had the Fed cut the federal interest rate by 0.5 point. Do you see that as being a positive sign for the economy moving forward? Is that a negative sign? How do you think that plays into what we're looking for in freight coming up?
Well, I definitely think that it is a sign of improvement, and as they say, it's definitely leads towards inflation dropping, and you know, the cost of living out on the road has always been expensive, and one of the things I used to do, and for drivers that have been there, the old timers, they know they have grocery store inside their truck so that they can eat out of their truck and not eat out of a restaurant or fast food or have to pay the high prices all the time. So there are sometimes, well, I'd like to provide some of my tips and tricks that I learned how to maintain my costs out there on the road, because there is for drivers it's more expensive than people that aren't having to go to truck stops, are limited to where they can go. So I definitely would say, I've thought about putting together a truck driver's cookbook to where you can cook right out of your truck.
Well, on that note, I mean, we got winter coming up. I know there's always challenges around winter time. Do you have any advice for drivers as we look towards winter, the winter season rolling around the corner?
Absolutely, it's imperative. It doesn't matter what the weather is where you're at currently. By the end of the day, you're probably going to be in a total different place with a total different climate. So you need to be prepared. And as winter approaches, we definitely need to make sure we have our winter gear, and be ready to chain and have our gloves and basically have at least a small reserve of food in your truck in case you get stranded. And even like a little trick that's an old timer trick is a candle in a coffee can, because if you get stranded out in below freezing weather, and the truck's not running, so you can't get heat from the truck, you can light the candle inside that coffee can. It'll radiate enough heat in the sleeper with the curtains closed to keep it above freezing, and it'll help keep you alive.
Yeah.
But definitely have a reserve of some type of food source, whether it's granola bars or jerky. I mean, have something in your truck that you can get by on.
Yeah. Well, now that you've been here, what is it, about a month and a half? Have you had a chance to get to know some of our drivers at Blackwell and sort of chat with them about their experience in the transition?
Yeah, I've had a couple guys come in the office to meet me, and I've talked to a number of them on the phone. And this week is Driver Appreciation Week, which I think is great for the company to recognize the drivers. There are some drivers out there that don't appreciate it, and I've seen some social media uptick in their opinions, but I'm just going to say this, and I think that as a whole, drivers, they don't feel appreciated. For the company to actually have a Driver Appreciation Week and recognize drivers, even if they think it's rigged or whatever guys may say, it's a great thing, and a lot of companies don't do it anymore. So for all you drivers out there, I appreciate obviously firsthand. And if you're wondering when's the last time I was in a truck, I was delivering U.S. mail about a month ago. So I'm not that far removed, but just know that you're appreciated. And sometimes it's not always said, but we do definitely, without you guys out there and those tires rolling, we wouldn't be here. So
absolutely, well said. Well said. So as you are getting settled into your role, what kind of challenges do you think you're going to be facing over the next, what are your top challenges over, say, the next 90 days as you're getting yourself settled in?
Well, the market is definitely a challenge. We're coming into what we consider peak season, and we should have an uptick of freight. But the freight rates aren't increasing like they should. Because of the fact that we do have more drivers and trucks out there than we got loads. But it's our hope, I'm sure all of us as a whole, drivers and administrative staff here, that the market will recover and start going up, so we can have plenty of freight miles and loads available. I think the biggest challenge that we have is keeping the trucks rolling.
So I know something that we've been working on for a while is diversifying the kinds of refrigerated freight that we can haul, expanding into some new markets. We've been doing some work on the combined side with expanding into some aerospace, and I know there's been some conversations of fall off with like impregnated carbon fiber that needs temperature controlled. Where are we at on that sort of expansion of the freight for Blackwell?
So we're definitely looking at different avenues that are more consistent, and it's been my pleasure to go and meet some of our customers that are dedicated customers. And when looking at a dedicated customer where we actually have a contract and we can utilize the contracted rates as opposed to the spot market, which is horrible, we're able to grow with them, especially when we know, I had the pleasure of meeting with some of the larger companies that we deal with, which, if you guys don't know, we have a customer named Lactalis, which is the largest dairy company in the world. And they plan on doubling their business this year. And I'm hoping that we can grow with them. And that dedicated freight is going to make all the difference. But when it comes to climate control, it doesn't, there's a million different things, whether it's electronics, chocolate, which we don't much think is something that would be climate control. But if it gets too hot, it doesn't preserve well, and if it gets too cold, it's the same thing. So there's that medium that you have to meet in the middle, and so there are definitely different aspects, even like parcels or mail, climate control mail, that needs to be maintained at a certain temperature, which is not necessarily as regulated if you're hauling refrigerated food, frozen food, ice cream. Those are definitely have to have sub-zero temperatures sometimes.
But yeah, so that world of sort of the non-food stuffs, there's a world out there for us to be able to hopefully dip our toes in, if you will. So you said sort of we're getting into busy season here with Blackwell. What is that hopefully going to mean for the average driver in the fleet? I mean, what's that going to look like? Change in freight patterns, change in miles?
So there are businesses that they have a reduction in business just because of the seasonality of it, like water. Water is usually bought and purchased during the spring and summer months because people are going out, doing things, hiking. So there's a lot more bottled water that is consumed, barbecues, In the wintertime, there's not so much bottled water that's purchased. So those lanes do deplete, and we try and find other lanes or work for those particular trucks that where the reductions are. The bottom, I guess, the ultimate goal is to make sure that all of our drivers don't see a reduction in miles. We want to increase mileage because we're out there to again make money. If those wheels aren't rolling, we're not making any money.
So as we think ahead to some of those opportunities in the future, what are some of the big opportunities that you see, for us to land, whether new customers or new lanes? What are those sort of shining stars on the horizon that you're reaching for?
So I think that there's definitely some customers in my past that I'm quite familiar with that I think would be a great addition to the Blackwell side of the company. That would be the dry van freight for whether it's USPS, FedEx, UPS, parcels and mail. Those would be dedicated contracts to where we can, maybe even look at some different ways of how we run the operations. There may be opportunities for drivers to be home every night and to actually have, more of a, as we might think, a normal life, which truck driver's life is far from being normal. But I think that there's opportunities to definitely increase drivers' wages as opposed to, mileage and also be at home.
Something that we had sort of done a little bit of and then kind of pulled back from and we're expanding is getting more trucks out east. Blackwell is still heavily focused on sort of the western regional freight. Do you still see that as the right focus for Blackwell to stay sort of west, or do you see a future where we continue to expand out east in the refrigerated side or the dry van side?
I definitely think that there's a future for us to grow back east, and definitely as we get more dedicated customers. Some of these larger customers we have, they have locations all over the United States. As a matter of fact, just yesterday we went and did a tour of Crystal Geyser, which is one of our customers, dedicated customers, and I wasn't I didn't know that they had actually different locations all over the United States. So just those, even just those meetings and doing a tour and finding out different things about our current customers and the capacity that they have, definitely leads me to believe that we can grow with our customers. And then having that dedicated contract work, it becomes more stable for our drivers, stable for the company. And I think that's going to make the difference because, markets, they rise and they fall. When you get into a contract rate, the difference is that you set the contract rate for a certain amount of time so that you can navigate through those times of the market rising and falling to try and make more of a
You're more consistent.
Yeah. Basically, consistent lifestyle for the driver and mileage and pay.
Mm-hmm. To just summarize that, what I hear you saying is not only do we have potential opportunities as we look at new markets, but also within our existing customer base, there are good opportunities for us to continue to grow business, especially dedicated business, and hopefully add more good lanes in that regard.
Yeah, I think capacity, I think there's a threefold when it comes to capacity. And when I talk about capacity, it's how many trucks, how many drivers, how many trailers, how many customers we have service, and how many locations they have that need service. Then on top of that, you look at, okay, they've got products coming in that are typically supplies for them to create whatever they create or package what they make. Those are the things I know even, and here I'll put this out there for you drivers. Man, if you come across a shipper or consignee that you go to and you think, man, this would be great, let us know about it, because those opportunities are often you guys see that we don't see because you're there. So yeah, if you think that there's a great opportunity for us, and especially if it's in an area that you live or close by where you live, then it's a win-win situation for both of us.
I know, as like you said, the freight market has gotten really tight for us, and so our shippers and consignees are continuing to raise their expectations of us, and we've got to meet that. As a driver, what should a driver be aware of, and how is what they're doing impacting our scorecards and our metrics, and how do we, how can a driver help us get some more freight from these customers by showing how good we are?
Basically, exactly what you said. For you guys out there that don't know, most of our customers, they do have what they call a scorecard, and they rate us on time delivery, on time arrivals, and it's the driver has probably 80 to 90% of influence on that, because if you come and you show up late and then you have a bad attitude, it impacts our scorecard, and if they get complaints from people on the dock, then they're not going to be apt to use us or even look at us for up and coming contracts that are available. So it's absolutely imperative, and you guys are the ones who make a difference, whether our customers are happy with us, satisfied, or if they're ticked off. And a lot of it's communication. We just need to communicate with our customer. And I know that, it's easy to oversleep but this is really our livelihood, guys, and we need everybody, especially during this time, to really put it together and be the best we can be, so that we get the service and we get the miles that we can utilize to get our drivers more miles to get more pay. And it's really sustainability. It's really sustainability that I'm talking about. If we want to sustain a contract and something that people or drivers are used to delivering to, and they like delivering to those places, we need to step it up a notch and be that much better at what we do to impress our customers and make sure that we're being kind, not using foul language. And as a truck driver, they don't say cuss like a sailor anymore. They say you cuss like a truck driver. We need to be professional. I know you guys out there, whether you realize it or not, you represent Blackwell. You represent Combined, and we're only as good as you are. So I appreciate the guys that do a great job, and I'm not trying to condemn anybody by saying that, but we all can do a little better at what we do to make a difference.
Well, Buddy, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. That about wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to add before we close?
Absolutely. I'd like to recognize Marvell Wright as our Driver of the Year for Blackwell. From what I understand, he's been just an amazing driver, and always, very kind to the dispatchers and fleet managers, and always willing to do whatever it takes to make, a successful, whether it's making a trailer move at the customer or doing something at the yard. And I've heard that he's helped other drivers as well. So, thanks, Marvell, for being the person you are and representing Blackwell that way.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Marvell, and thank you, Buddy, for joining us today. It's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Buddy, for the great interview. It's always good to have another third-generation trucker here at Combined and Blackwell. Trucking runs in our blood, and it's always good to have people who have that same experience here on the team. Next episode will be out on October 18th. We'll feature Chris Clark. We have a bunch of changes coming up around fleet managers and driver services. I know a lot of you have seen some of those changes that are coming. Chris is going to be here to give us an update on where we're at with this process, as well as to answer any questions that you guys have about what's happening with fleet managers. If you have any questions, please send them to us via Facebook or email them to us at cbtalk@combinedtransport.com. We appreciate your participation. It's your engagement that makes this podcast work. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of the Combined Transport team.